Hey everybody, my name's Jesse and welcome to My Wrestling Show, the place where we talk about all things wrestling. Folk style wrestling, freestyle wrestling, college wrestling, Olympic wrestling, world championships, NCAA tournament. I want this channel to grow and be a wrestling community. There's really only two wrestling media organizations that cover wrestling full time. And I think that needs to change. I think there's room for more people to cover the sport of wrestling. So I want this channel to be a part of that. So like, subscribe, comment. Let's build a community around wrestling, around the sport that we love. Today I want to talk about the Missouri Tigers and their 2022-2023 lineup. Doing lineup previews, and I want to do the Missouri Tigers today. So let's take a look at their lineup. So to start off, this team, if I'm a Missouri fan, I'm really excited about this team, but really nervous. And I'll explain why as I go through the video. Um, there's a lot of potential, but then there's a lot that could go wrong. So there's a high ceiling, but then a pretty low floor. And I'll explain what I mean as I go through the lineup. 125, returning starter, Noah Certain. 133, you have Connor Brown, also returning starter. 141, Alan Hart, very close to All-American in the past few tournaments. We'll see if he can break that streak this year and get on the podium. 149, Brock Mahler. He redshirted last year, coming back at 149. Interested to see what he does. Josh Edmond was the starter last year. 157, Jarrett Jacques. Been a starter for a few years now. The returning national champ Keegan O'Toole at 165, 174 Peyton Mako, 184 Sean Harmon, 197 Rocky Elam, and 285 Zach Elam. So the interesting thing here is there's not going to be really any lineup battles. Most of these guys were in the lineup last year. And so they returned basically all their starters except for at 184. Sean Harmon will be a new starter this year. But everyone else is pretty much back. I mean, Josh Edmond was technically the starter last year at 149, but now he's redshirting, and Brock Mahler is going to take the starting role this year. So let's take a look at the rankings and see where they can improve and where they might drop. So at 125, as we said, Noah Certain, he's ranked number 12. So the reoccurring theme here, and why this team is really exciting but really scary, is you have a bunch of guys that are like fringe All-Americans, guys that are ranked about 7 through 12, 7 through 13, where they're right on the border, and depending on the day, they might hit the podium or they might not. And so to score points at the NCAA tournament, you really have to get on the All-American, and you really have to kind of get kind of high. And so Noah Certain is a perfect example of that. So he's a tough wrestler to make out. He's got some strange losses, but then he has some pretty quality wins. So he needs to find some consistency in his quality of wins. So he'll go out, he'll beat a Sam Latona, he'll beat a Jacob Camacho, but then he'll lose to Brody Teske or Trevo Mastrogiovanni, which are quality wrestlers, but they're not top tier guys. And so if he can take that next step, he can kind of solidify himself in maybe kind of this number 7 spot, number 6 spot. So I'd say Noah Certain's, sorry about that. So I'd say Noah Certain's ceiling is probably number 7 right here. I think he lost to Brandon Kaylor in the blood round this last year. And so I'll say he can certainly flip that result. So I'll say his ceiling is number 7. And then his floor, again, he has some weird losses. I think his floor could kind of be kind of low, maybe around a 16 kind of guy. Anthony Noto is really tough, wrestles hard for 7 minutes, so that could be one he could lose. He could lose to Malik Heinzelman. I don't really see him losing to Joey Prada. Robbie Howard, we don't really know much about what he'll be this year, but if he gets better, that's someone he could potentially lose to. So, and Caleb Smith's pretty tough. So, find more consistency, take that next step, and maybe he can get up in that maybe 7 spot. So that's one potential All-American for Missouri. Connor Brown, he's ranked here down at 27. That's probably about right. He's kind of interesting. He had a lot of potential coming out of high school, wrestled pretty well at South Dakota State, and then just kind of tapered off. Went up to 133 because he was at 125 at South Dakota State and Wisconsin, I believe. Now 133 at Missouri. For him, you just got to hope he gets better, hope he improves, kind of return to that guy he was growing to be at South Dakota State. I think if you're Missouri, if he qualifies for the tournament, maybe he steals a couple matches, you feel pretty good about that. But kind of a long shot to really make the podium unless he makes drastic improvements. 141. Looking at 141, this is, you got Alan Hart here. Sorry, this is 149. 141 is what we want to talk about. Alan Hart at number 7. So again, he's another kind of fringe guy right at that 7 spot. So could easily fall out of that All-American spot. But this is what I like about the 141 class in Alan Hart. He could pretty much go with all of these guys here. I mean, you don't have like a Yanni or a last year like a Nick Lee, who are clear number ones. It's really going to be tough to beat. Alan Hart can wrestle with a Clay Carlson. I know he's lost to Andrew Alirez a few times. I think he lost to Real Wood last year. But he can wrestle with these guys. He can wrestle with a Cole Matthews, a Jake Berglund. The question is can he consistently beat and compete with these top tier guys, right? Because he's going to have to string together a few wins, like an Andrew Alirez in the quarters, a Real Woods in the semifinals, a Cole Matthews in the finals to get to that podium. So I'm going to say Alan Hart's ceiling. I'll say 2. I kind of want to say 1. His results last year aren't national championship results, but this weight class isn't super top heavy, and so that's why I'm kind of saying he could be number 1. I'm going to say number 2 just because I don't necessarily view him as a national champion quality wrestler yet. So I'll say 2 if he wrestles really great. His floor, I'll probably say his floor is 8. I think he could probably lose to Dylan D'Amelio. Anyone lower than that, Sammy Alvarez was really good a couple years ago when he was wrestling, so he could lose to Sammy Alvarez. Be interesting to see how Bo Bartlett gets better going down a weight class. So this Lachlan McNeil is going to be really tough. So there might be a few guys down here that could give him a run for his money, but I feel pretty good about saying Alan Hart is probably a floor of 9 or 10 is probably his floor. You could even say 8, right, is his floor. So you feel pretty good, 70 to 80% chance he's going to All-American, but he's got to take that next step. 149, Brock Mahler. So he's kind of interesting too. Currently ranked at 5th. So his freshman and sophomore years, right, going into his senior year, you would say, yeah, he's a surefire All-American. He All-Americaned his previous 2 years. He's going to be an All-American kind of guy. No questions here. Where you get a little bit of pause is, I know he was redshirting last year, and I'm sure they put less pressure on the results on the mat in the redshirt year and more focused on just getting better as a wrestler. And so they're probably not really peaking. They're probably just showing up and competing. But it is somewhat concerning at 157. He had a couple strange losses. He lost to Chase Saldate from Michigan State. I can't remember the other loss right now, but a couple strange losses that you wouldn't expect. Now, I say that, but in the years in the past, like one year when he was an All-American, he lost to Hayden Hastings of, was it Hayden Hastings of? No. The 149 from Jerome or Jaron from Wyoming. I can't quite remember his name right now, which was a strange loss for Brock Mahler, but he ended up All-American that year. So he has had some strange losses in the past and still performed at the NCAA tournament, but that's always just concerning, right? When you get those kind of weird, strange losses. So I think 5's probably about right. In this particular field, 149 is pretty deep. So again, he's gonna kind of have a high ceiling and a pretty low floor. I'll say his ceiling. I'll say his ceiling is probably 3. Kind of up here, just behind a Sammy Sasso, maybe a 3-4 spot. I don't think anyone's gonna catch Yanni. I don't think he would beat Sammy Sasso. I wonder if he could beat Austin Gomez. That's the one question. That would be highly dependent on the matchup between the two. So that would be an interesting match. But all these other guys are really tough. Jonathan Miller, Kyle Parko, Yaya Thomas, Max Murin, Jay Nabis. All of them are All-American type guys. All of them have All-American except for Max Murin. Anthony Artelone is tough. Dom Demas is really good, All-American. Zach Sherman, man, this weight class is tough. Zach Sherman's an All-American. Michael Blockus is tough. So I'll say Brock Mahler's floor is probably the round of 16. And that's just because he had a couple strange losses. And if you're not on your game in this weight class, you won't make it past the round of 16 because it's pretty deep. You got All-Americans all the way up and down this weight class. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes out to start the year. That'll tell us a lot probably coming out the gate. 157, Jarrett Jacques. I hope I say that right. 16, that's probably about right. You could probably put him anywhere in from 12 all the way down to 25. 2 years ago he lost in the blood round, so he was right there to place. But then this year he kind of just fell off. Had some strange losses at the end of the year. So I don't know why he kind of fell off this past year. Hopefully he can get that figured out. If he does get that figured out, I think I'll say his ceiling's probably 10. I think there's a clear gap, like there's a clear drop off from 9 to the rest of these guys. Everyone from 9 and above is really, really tough. And so I think Jarrett could fit right in there at the 10 spot behind Josh Humphreys. And because he's had some weird losses, I could say, I'll say his floor is maybe 1 and 2 at the NCAA tournament. Maybe he loses to Patty Gallagher, a Cody Bond type wrestler in the second round of the consolation bracket. So hopefully he can get back to his 2021 season type self and he can get up here in this blood round and potentially push for an All-American. 165. So Keegan O'Toole, I really have nothing. He impresses me so much. He is so good. I'm gonna pick him again to repeat as a national champion. I know David Card's coming up. I know Shane Griffith is a returning national qualifier. I know Dean Hamidi was a true freshman last year. He's going to get even better. I know Carson Karchla pushed Keegan O'Moore to the edge in that quarterfinal. I can't remember if it's quarterfinals or semifinals, but in the NCAA tournament match. But I think Keegan O'Toole, I mean, he's just, even from his true freshman year to his second year freshman year, he got substantially better, and he's just going to keep getting better. And so I like Keegan O'Toole to repeat here as a national champ. Obviously, his ceiling's going to be 1, and his floor, honestly, is probably 3. Maybe he catches David Carr in the semifinals, and Carr beats him, and he wrestles back and gets 3rd. So even on Keegan Moore's worst day, he probably places no lower than 3rd. 174 here, you have Peyton Mako, multiple year starter. Again, another fringe guy, 10. He's another fringe guy. He could probably go as high as 7. Again, there's a clear line to me between 6, these top 6, and then after that. And so, he could probably pick off a Dustin Plott, a Clay Lout, and an Ethan Smith. Although I wouldn't consistently pick that. And so I'm going to say his ceiling is a 7. And his floor, I'm going to say his floor is probably a blood round. Edmund Ruth, I think, is going to be trouble in this weight class. I think Nelson Browns is actually out for the year. Yeah, I'm going to say, you feel pretty good about him making the blood round. You look at some of these guys, and I think he beats most of them 8 times out of 10. He could definitely beat a Demetrius Romero, a Michael O'Malley, a Phil Conigliaro from Harvard. But can he beat an Ethan Smith, a Clay Lout, a Dustin Plott? And can he beat that type of wrestler twice in a row? I don't know yet. He hasn't proven that. And so he's been solid all of his years at Missouri, so he hasn't taken too many big leaps year to year. But if he can take another small kind of improvement, another step moving in the right direction, maybe he can solidify himself as this number 7 guy and give himself a chance, right, to get in this top 6. So fringe guy, another option to get an All-American from Missouri. Sean Harmon. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record. What an interesting wrestler. He has some, I'll just say, bad losses. He's ranked here at number 8. He's got some bad losses, but then he has some really quality wins last year, at the end of last year. He beat, let's take a look real quick. He beat, did he beat? Yeah, he beat Dustin Plott of Oklahoma State, an All-American, and he beat Hayden Hastings of Wyoming. And so that gives you some hope. That makes you think, okay, he's got the potential. But then he has some strange losses, like this loss to Tristan Willis of Little Rock, this loss from Pat from Northern Iowa, and a few others, like, and then Abner Romero from Lindenwood. Those are just some strange losses, and so he's got 3 of them, at least 3 strange losses, and so that gives you some concern. So I think if you're a Missouri fan, if he qualifies for the tournament, if he maybe picks off a match, you feel good about what you got from him. Probably not going to expect him to All-American or sniff the blood round, unless right, he's the guy who beats Dustin Plott and Hayden Hastings, then maybe he gets there. But because of those 3 losses, you really just haven't seen enough to really say, yeah, you feel good about that. So I'll say his ceiling is probably the round of 16, with a floor of not qualifying for the tournament. No, he qualifies, right? He's good enough to beat Dustin Plott and Hayden Hastings. He's good enough to say, yeah, he's going to qualify. So excited to see what he does this year in the Missouri lineup. 197, Rocky Elam. Um, he he had an interesting year for me. So he goes to the Junior World Championships. He wins the Junior World title, and at the Junior World title, he was just getting takedowns. He was down by a couple takedowns to in the semifinals and the finals, and he just goes after takedowns, gets them, comes back to win. Um, or did he lose in the Junior World Finals? I can't remember, but anyways, I think he won. Um, but anyways, Junior World Champion, and then he just really didn't get his offense going like I thought he would in the college season. So I'd like to see him come back to form and really get his offense going and his leg attacks going. And if that happens, there's no one in here I don't think he can beat. He could certainly beat. I get this is a really deep weight class. Max Dean is really tough, but he's not unbeatable. I don't view Max Dean quite like a Spencer Lee or a Yanni or Gable Stevenson like that. I mean, he's good. Don't get me wrong. He's a returning national champ, um, but he's not unbeatable. And so if Rocky Elam can figure out his offense, I think he can beat a Max Dean, Jacob Worm, Stephen Buchanan, Bernie Truax. Bernie Truax, I think, is going to be a really big problem for these guys. Just making this weight class even deeper. A little off topic there, but just thought I'd note that. And this is deep, man. Nina Bonacorsi, national finalist. Michael Beard, All-American. Louis Dupre, All-American. Younger Bastida, getting better every single day. Um, Tanner Sloan, yeah, this is Cam Caffey way down here at 15. Isaac Trumbull way down here at 18. I mean, this is a super deep weight. So I'm going to say Rocky Elam's ceiling is a national champion, number one. Um, he's lost to Isaac Trumbull, so he could probably lose to some of these guys. But he's good enough where I'd say his floor is probably like a number 8. He wrestled the national tournament 100 times. He's probably going to All-American 93 of them. So I'll say his floor is 6. And then lastly, Zach Elam. Again, he's a fringe guy, right there on the border. And so that's probably like the 4th or 5th time I said this. He's a fringe guy right on the border. So ranked at number 10. Ceiling, I'll say his ceiling's probably 5. I think he could probably wrestle with a Tate Orndorff, a Lucas Davison, a Wyatt Hendrickson. His floor, the good thing is here he has a pretty high floor, right? A floor is probably the blood round, probably number 12, right behind Trent Hilger. So his floor is probably not much lower than number 10, but all these guys are pretty tough. But he can wrestle with them. He could potentially get in the All-American slot. So where are they ranked right now as a tournament team? Number 5. So here's the thing. You have Keegan O'Toole, who's going to place really, really high. You have Brock Mahler, who's placed twice, who's All-American twice. You feel pretty good he's going to place there again. You have Rocky Elam. I said his floor is 6. He's ranked 4th. He could certainly improve on that. So you have 3 guys you feel really good about. 3 guys, a national champ, a 3rd, and a 4th is going to get you probably top 10 just with that. The question is to get to 5, to get to 4, to get to 3, to get to 2, is what do you get from these other guys? Can Noah Certain, All-American, can he finish 5th? Can Alan Hart, All-American, can he finish 6th? Can Connor Brown steal a match or 2, get a 2 or 3 team points? Can Zach Elam, All-American, finish 7th? Can Harmon steal a couple matches? Can Peyton Mako get over the hump? All-American, finish 7th. So you have all these bullets, right? You have 4 outside of those 3 that I mentioned. You have 4 or 5 guys that are right there on the fringes that can either fall out or that can either All-American. So you could potentially have 8 All-Americans, or you could have 3, right? With your 3, you're going to get top 10. If you get 8 All-Americans, you're probably 2nd, depending on where they place. And if they all place in the top three, it'd be highly unlikely with, um, maybe you're pushing for a national championship. And so I think Missouri could finish second and beat out Iowa. If they get 7 All-Americans, 6 All-Americans that place decently high, they have the team to do it. And they have a pretty low floor with Keegan O'Toole, Brock Mahler, and Zach Elam that you feel pretty good about are going to place. Excellent dual team, by the way, because they're French. Every guy's ranked in the top 10 basically, or the top 15. They're going to be a really, really good dual team. They'll probably win most of their duels, except for maybe if they wrestle at Penn State. So that's my take on Missouri wrestling in the 2022-2023 season. A lot to cheer for if you're a Missouri Tiger. Thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe, like, leave a comment. Let's talk about wrestling. Let's build a community around the sport we love. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.